Okay, so thank you to everybody who's come along for this seminar for National Archaeology Week on confronting global challenges through the 10th World Archaeological Congress in Darwin. The conference will be held 22nd to 28th of June 2025, which is this year, next month. And the panel is really made up of people who are keynote speakers in some way or another, or executives of the officers of the World Archaeological Congress. So I'm Claire Smith. I'm a professor of archaeology at Flinders University, and I'm in Adelaide tonight. So perhaps if the next person, somebody else could introduce who they are and where they are.
Yeah, shall I start then? My name is Koji Mizoguchi, the current president of the World Archaeological Congress, based in Kyushu, Japan. And today I am on tour to attend another biggest meeting in Japan, the Japanese Archaeological Association, and speaking from near Tokyo. Nice to see you.
Peter or Inez?
Let me go. I'm Peter Stone. I've been involved in WAC since before WAC existed, if that makes sense. I started helping to plan what became the first WAC in 1984, and I've been involved ever since. I'm at the moment the UNESCO Chair in Cultural Property Protection and Peace at Newcastle University in the UK.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Inés Domingo. I'm the Vice President of WAC, and I'm a ICREA Research Professor at the University of Barcelona. We welcome all of you to join us in WAC-10 in Darwin.
What about Alfredo or Kisha?
Hello. My webcam is not working, sorry. I'm Alfredo González-Ruibal. I'm a researcher at the Spanish National Research Council, and I'm speaking from Madrid.
Kasun. My name is Kisha Supernant. I am a professor in the Department of Anthropology at the University of Alberta in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. And I'm coming to you today from Mizoguchi, which is the Cree name for Edmonton, Alberta, Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis Nation.
Lovely. And it's about 7 a.m. where you are. 6:30 a.m. when we started. Oh my God. Karina?
Hi, I'm Karina Croucher. I'm based in Bradford in the United Kingdom, our UK City of Culture. I've got to get that plug in every time, although I'm not in Bradford at the moment. I'm a professor of archaeology, heritage and wellbeing, and I'm here representing both myself and Professor Hannah Cobb from the University of Manchester, who is unable to join us today. Really delighted to be here. Thank you.
And Bayo?
Yeah, my name is Bayo Folorunso. I'm a professor of archaeology at the University of Ibadan, and I'm just 11 months to retirement. This is quite an interesting time for me to be part of WAC. Speaking from Ibadan, that's in Oyo State of Nigeria. Presently, I'm passing my weekend at my home that I've built for retirement. I'm in my study and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. We also have Alok Kumar Kanungo, who's from India, and he's trying to get into the meeting. So I've just I've sent him a link. So hopefully, when he is able to get in, then he can introduce himself. Karina, you've done. So is there anyone I've missed? Caroline, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Claire. I'm Caroline Spry. I'm co-chair of National Archaeology Week in Australia, and I'm joining you from Melbourne. And it's 11 o'clock at night here. I'm very excited to be joining people from around the world, and I'll just be taking a back seat and providing some tech support in the background.
Great. And then when Alok can come, we'll... Okay, so WAC-10 is going to be in Darwin in 22nd to the 28th of June. We have around 1,900 people registered at the moment. Maybe 400 or 500 are virtual. The numbers come in every day. I just don't keep a perfect thing on that, but and it's a great. Yep.
Yeah, I'm Alok here.
Oh, Alok. Okay, so Alok Kumar Kanungo, are you in Gandhinagar?
I'm in Pune.
Okay.
I'm in Pune now. Okay. I had some issue about the internet, so I got a little late. And I'm Alok Kanungo. I work as an archaeologist in IIT Gandhinagar in Gujarat. And my interest remains on understanding the origin of the Nagas in ethnography, and archaeological interest remains in the understanding of the ancient technology with special reference to glass and iron.
And Alok works very closely with Naga, obviously Indigenous people from Nagaland, but you also work closely with Indigenous people in Gujarat. So I spent quite a bit of time there working with him, and he has very good working relationships with people. They're very respectful and thoughtful. So as I said, WAC is happening next month, and really this is really an opportunity for us to talk about why it's important, what we're doing, why people should come. But perhaps I will start with Peter Stone. Pete, if you can just talk a bit about the background for WAC, because there will be people here, there will be students probably, who have no idea of the background and the political and social agenda that we have.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, WAC was not in, or the first, what became the first World Archaeological Congress, which was held in Southampton in 1986, was never intended to be a World Archaeological Congress. That idea had never been voiced. It was going to be the 11th Congress of the International Union of Prehistoric and Protohistoric Sciences, a snappy title which trips off the lips. But that organization was affiliated to UNESCO and through UNESCO to the UN. And previous IUSPP congresses had been very focused on, real archaeology, pottery typologies, excavation reports, etc. And when the 4 members of the Council of the IUSPP from the UK asked if they could hold the next Congress in the UK in 1986, they didn't have an academic secretary in mind. And a number of people were asked to be that, and they refused. One person who was asked 3 times and refused was eventually persuaded to take on the job, and that was our sadly now lost colleague, Peter Ucko. And Peter had just come back from working in Australia for 10 years and facing many of the social challenges of archaeology. And so he insisted that the Congress was going to be about social issues and the social impact of archaeology, especially on local communities and on Indigenous communities. But he also insisted on a few other things. Firstly, that the Congress would not be chronologically or geographically orientated, but would be built around themes, and that might be early agriculture. But that would mean that he wanted people in the sessions in early agriculture to come from all over the world at the different times that that agriculture had developed to look for similarities and differences. I won't go through any more examples, but so themes, addressing the social impact, and the next thing that Peter wanted, which horrified the International Committee of the IUSPP, was to give equal standing to Indigenous elders who had, in an Indigenous environment, equal, if not much better understanding of their heritage than the so-called expert Western-trained archaeologists. And he also wanted something that had never happened before. He wanted students to attend the Congress, and he wanted research students from around the world, and he wanted undergraduates from UK universities who could get there cheaply and easily. All of those things made the International Committee of the IUSPP very nervous. But the thing that really made them terrified and ended up in that 11th Congress turning into the first WAC was the situation in South Africa. And at the time, South Africa was still under an apartheid government. And because of that, the UN had a total academic and cultural boycott of South Africa. But IUSPP, even though it was affiliated to the UN, completely ignored that and actually had South Africans, government representatives from South Africa on their international bodies. So that sort of was a contentious issue in the background until 1985, when the South African government declared a state of emergency. And as a result, the Southampton University Students' Union and Southampton City asked the organisers, or just checked with the organisers, that there weren't any South Africans or Namibians who came under the same ban attending the Congress. And when we looked up at the list of potential people who wanted to come, there were 26 South Africans and 1 Namibian. So there was an enormous debate, and I won't go through any of that, but the outcome of that debate was that we banned the participation of the 26 and 1. Because of that, that allowed the rest of Africa to come to the Congress, and almost no other Africans would have attended WAC-1 in Southampton had there been South Africans present. They wouldn't have been allowed to go by their governments, and even if they were allowed to go, they would have not come. So we had a very large African delegation from across the continent. We also had the largest ever delegation of archaeologists from the Soviet Union attending. All of this sounds very old-fashioned with the Soviet Union there. And the other one that we had for the first time since the Cultural Revolution, we had the first ever delegation from Communist China to what was still, well, by this time, what was just called the World Archaeological Congress. And Peter and the other organizers in Southampton and around the world only expected to be organizing this one Congress. And as the week went on, with about 1,000 people from 75 countries in Southampton, all talking in these thematic ways, with papers from research students, as I say, attended by students, undergraduates from all over the UK, there was a feeling that this couldn't stop and that we must go on. So at the plenary session of the Congress, where normally that is attended by those people who have to be there and anybody who's asleep from the previous session in the room, there were 1,000 people, and we had to move it to the City Hall to accommodate everybody. And at that, I was taking some notes of the meeting and the ideas, and I remember the sort of the whole group saying, okay, we have to, a committee that was being sort of thought about and put together, you have to do one of two things. You either have to go back to the IUSPP and make them see sense and agree with the UN boycott of South Africa, or if they won't, you have to, and I remember this, writing these words, create a new world organization. And I thought to myself, I wonder how you do that, because that was something way beyond anything that any of us were thinking about. But over the next few months and a couple of years, that steering committee, of which I was a member, discussed and pulled together, and 4 years later at WAC-2 in Venezuela, something that we never thought we'd ever see, the organization was born. And very sadly, there are of that group who were, I don't know, I have a photograph of them up there, 10 or 11 strong, probably. There are only 2 of us still alive. And I'll be there with you in Darwin. My colleague who can't be with us, Charlotte Kane, has recorded an interview with me, and that will be played at one of the sessions. So in a nutshell, that's the beginning of WAC. I don't think there has been any WAC, and they have been global. So the UK, Venezuela, India, gosh, that was an interesting one. Back in post-apartheid South Africa, Washington, another interesting one because it almost coincided with the deemed by most of us illegal invasion by the coalition of Iraq. Dublin, Jordan, Czech Republic, somewhere that I always forget, Japan, of course,
Yes.
and now Darwin. So we have been, but also there have been many intercongresses in between. But I probably had my time, and I'll stop there, Claire.
That's great.
My only point was nearly all of those have been in one way or another politically contentious. And that just underlines Peter Rocco's, whole conception that archaeology is political. Finished.
Yep, that's great. Pete, do you mind getting the photo and showing us the photo? I really want to see that, if you've got it close by. And then I'll move to Koji.
Yeah.
And Koji, but I do want to see the photo first.
Give me a minute. I will try and find it. It was here a couple of days ago.
Okay, no worries. If you can, if not, you just send it to me.
Yeah. I will, yeah.
Let's put it on the website. Let's put it on the front page of somewhere on the website.
Yeah.
So Koji, as president of WAC, could you perhaps talk a little bit about the social and political role, but also you organised very successful WAC-8 in Kyoto. Can you talk about some of the, the challenges? I can talk about the challenges of WAC-10, but really, you really don't want to hear that.
Yeah,
Go.
thank you,
Your turn.
Claire. The somewhat dramatic beginning and subsequent rather difficult history of this organization, WAC, which Peter nicely, beautifully put, inevitably makes WAC to be a justice-driven, perhaps, organization, the community of world archaeologists. Always try to be as inclusive as possible, always care about maximum equity, and so on, which naturally put us in always difficult and contentious position, not only politically, but also quite often financially and quite even emotionally. And to add, back then, 1986, seen from now, world had begun to be complex and complicated. But since then, it has become complicated perhaps millions of times more. And back then, the bad, right, and righteous and good could very easily be spotted in the form of apartheid and all that. But nowadays, we can't even figure out how much and how little which side was doing bad or good. That put us work to be always on the tightrope in making any statement or anything. which inevitably always raise voices from different interest groups and sectors and all that. But one thing I try to cling on is perhaps following up on the tradition of the beginning of WAC to comply with what the body of international sort of justice and international righteousness that was still and is the UN. So the basic UN policy and the international body's opinion on the matters happening should guide us. That is not necessarily the referential framework, but one referential framework with which we can take a balanced but necessarily politically committed attitude towards world matters. For instance, we just issued statements concerning the Gaza crisis. And together with it, we also just issued the statement telling the membership and the world that we are to come up with a protocol on how to react to wars, conflicts, and human rights based contingencies. We have to always try to be as democratic and transparent as possible in making any decisions. But in doing that, we shouldn't forget the foundational causes of WAC, that is justice-driven and equity promoting and as inclusive as possible, something like that. And then thanks to Claire and Heather Burke's tremendous and just amazing effort, we are to have nearly 500 people who otherwise couldn't come to work from either indigenous or minority or economically challenged circumstances. Therefore, I'm pretty sure that WAC-10 will be genuine embodiment of our foundational causes and principles. But that always is making the position of academic secretary and those who are supporting her or him very tough. Sometimes that would put their family members stressed out. That's also happening to my family too. So I would like to remind you that WAC changes your life in many ways. That's it.
Well,
yes.
I must say that my son hates me at the moment, that's for sure. He's just, too much WAC, not enough family. So I'm just going to, because we've got 35 minutes to go, I'm just going to give people 5 minutes and I'll just kind of interrupt a little bit if we need to, but we've got enough time. So thank you, Koji. That was very kind and interesting. I'd like to go to one of the keynote speakers. And perhaps, Karina, would you be happy to speak first a little bit about, Karina is doing the end note. She and Hannah Cobb are doing the end note on the last night, and they're doing it, you're doing it in town, Danella, but then we're going out, where most of us are staying at Club Tropical, and Club Tropical are hosting a party for several hundred people out there that night. So, and since they have 400 people living there, we know at least 400 people are going to their party. Karina, do you want to talk a little bit about the EndNote and what your role is?
Yeah, sure. So it's myself and Hannah Cobb in Manchester, and it's based on the work we've been doing for many years now around trying to get a global network together around teaching and learning in archaeology and heritage. Hannah and I have been working in teaching and learning for, I think it's more than 20 years now, and have been inspired by people on the call here and others before us. We both used to work for something called the Higher Education Academy in the UK, and when that disbanded, we realised there wasn't really a home or a place, at least in the UK, for supporting teaching and learning in archaeology and heritage. so we were kind of plugging away doing various conference sessions, and then during COVID we had intended to give a session at TAG in the United States, which obviously couldn't happen, so we decided to run it online anyway, and the teaching and learning online roundtables were born this many years later, but they're still running roughly every month, not always every month, but and have attracted a global audience. We ran the first online teaching and learning and archaeology and heritage conference in September of 2021, and again we ran it with extended I think we started early and ended about 11 p.m. UK time to try and capture different time zones. I think, poor Claire, you had to join us at a quite unsociable hour for you as ever. And what we're trying to do now is establish a society for teaching and learning in archaeology and heritage, working with Laura Hampton, who's involved in decolonisation and detoxing museums. Again, we've got a global steering panel underway now. And Peter, I might come and pick your brains about how you set up a global organisation, because that might be really useful. So we're in our early stages, but it's kind of really demonstrated that there is a need for this community. And just a few things about our core values. So equality, diversity and inclusion runs through everything we do. We recognise that we need to be more diverse and more inclusive. Partly for the sustainability of our discipline, but also because it makes our discipline better. It's what we need is diverse voices from around the world and from different backgrounds. So that's something we embed, and we think that through our teaching and learning is the natural way of doing this, starting early, getting the message across. And also, I guess the other thing I'll end on is we're really passionate about breaking down the barriers between teaching, research and practice, and recognising that everything we do is holistic and impacts on everything else, and trying to see what we do as connected and not just silo off, teaching from research, and valuing our early career researchers and, giving them a support network and a way forward in this really challenging world that we see. So yeah, there we go.
Great, thank you. So I think the DEI is great, because I think obviously in some parts of the world it is threatened, and it makes
scary.
Which is why we made that fundraising, early career women. We had that whole debate about, it might be blowback in the US, and some people are frightened to show that they're donating. They donate anonymously, and so we had a whole debate around that. But that's a nice segue to Kisha Supernant, because Kisha is part of the Braiding Knowledge Centre, Braiding Indigenous Knowledge in Science Centre that Sonia Adelaide is the director of. And I'd just like to say welcome to Kasun, who is from Sri Lanka, but studying or working in India at the moment. So Kasun, do you just want to say a little bit about who you are, and then we'll go to Kisha?
Sure, ma'am. Thank you for inviting me for this panel. I am from Sri Lanka. I am Kasun Jayasuriya. I am an archaeologist in Sri Lanka. Currently, I am pursuing my PhD in Bangalore University. That's all. I'm working on the symbolism, symbolism based on the architecture. So that's it.
I'll come back. Thank you, Kasu. And I'll come back to you when we talk about visas. I want to talk about that with Bayo and with you, because Kasun's been very helpful. He's been helping people do their visa applications. Kisha, would you mind going now?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thank you, Claire, and it's really great to be here with everyone. I'm going to be speaking at WAC-10 about some of my work situating archaeology as a form of restorative justice, something which I think really fits with the founding values of WAC and then the ongoing and unfolding values as we face these global challenges. So my work is wide-ranging. I am a citizen of the Otipemisiwak Métis government in Alberta. We are a recognized Indigenous people in Canada, and a lot of my work engages with how we understand archaeology from an Indigenous perspective. I work a lot with my own nation and develop kind of an approach to archaeology that's situated in our ways of knowing and being. But also, I would say one of the biggest challenges we've been facing in Canada and in many settler colonial nations is reckoning with the truth of our history. And Canada, about 4 years ago now, made international news where the recognition came that there were many children who were institutionalized in residential schools here in Canada, and many of them, thousands of them, died. And their burial locations are unknown to their families and communities. So I have been very actively involved in Canada over the last 4 years, but even before that, in supporting nations to locate those graves of missing children. And so this is a form of archaeology, which is not, I don't think of it as research. It's very much communities come, they need me and my skill set as an archaeologist to support their search for justice and accountability for the genocide that the Canadian government, the settler colonial government, enacted on Indigenous peoples here. And so telling that truth is a really important aspect of my work. And so I'm going to be talking a lot about how those things intersect and really framing it also in some work I've done with many other wonderful colleagues around heart-centered archaeological practice. So, Koji, when you were speaking about the sort of emotional impacts of a lot of the work that we try to do in a justice-oriented and equity-centered way, it is a lot of additional emotional labor as well. And we don't talk about that academically enough. We don't talk about the intersection between our hearts as well as our heads. And I'll be framing my talk really grounded in heart-centered practice, this idea that we are all whole people and we are differently impacted by these intersecting injustices. So as an Indigenous woman in Canada, I face particular kinds of histories and injustices that I'm trying to navigate through. And we need to be able to situate ourselves in that way in, emotional and spiritual as well as intellectual ways. So I'm excited to bring some of my work to this amazing global audience, to people from across many parts of the world. And, I'm really excited that WAC is able to support so many folks who couldn't potentially otherwise travel to conferences of this nature, and then be in dialogue with many people who've inspired me over the years and thinking about, for me, a future, right? So a lot of the work I do is also very future oriented. Where is archaeology now? Where should it go? And I think, hearing, Peter, your reflections on the initial for formation of WAC, those issues are still so important and so present. And we haven't perhaps moved as far as maybe we would have hoped over 40 years. But there's still, I think, a lot of reason for hope when we come together collectively as a global community and share and support and uplift each other and imagine how we can move forward where archaeology really is a form of restorative justice, and the toolkit that we have as archaeologists can be deployed in different ways than maybe we had imagined, where it really is in service of community needs and can really sort of build a different kind of future. So that's really what I'm going to be bringing to my keynote, and I'm really looking forward to coming and sharing that with you all.
That is very exciting. And the link between you, there's a clear link between you and Alok Kumar Kanungo, who does a lot of work on repatriation, especially for Naga people. Alok, do you want to talk for a little about the work you do and your paper in your session at the conference?
Alok, you're muted, I think.
Alok, you need to unmute. We can't hear you.
You're muted.
Caroline.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes. In fact, today I'm not going to talk what I'm going to talk in the WAC, but what worries me in the challenging time and what has happened in the past a month or so in India, like how the past can be a unifying factor in this diverse country. So in that case, it needs to be protected, valued, and incorporated, because India is very diverse in culture, language, tradition, and the way of life. What we have, most of it was developed with respect to diverse and rich. What we have, a rich cultural erasure, is association with the past. Past needs, in one case, which needs a scientific evaluation, But another case which has become more important is reachability. For example, every Indian associates himself or herself at present with the Harappans of the Northwest. And for that matter, for last 1 decade or so, there is a lot of evidence from the 3rd millennium BCE metallurgical tradition in South India. And it was not too long ago when the pride was the same while associating with the early historic Mauryas. The same will be the effect when age and when we start associating early hominin evidence in South India, which has come from the sites like Atrampakam, Honsgi, and Kurnool, which provided insights into early human migration, tool technology, evolution, and environmental adaptation from about 1.5 million years ago. And it needs a wider awareness which needs to come into the syllabus of the school, irrespective of which state, which region, which language we are speaking of. Then only that will give a better footing the way all the time we talk of Harappan. To give an example, ethnographically, if I bring an example, I'll bring to the Naga Hills of Northeast India, where I have been working for last 3 decades, where Professor Claire Smith spent a respectable time, and which Professor Smith talked about repatriation issue of Naga ancestral remains, which we will talk more elaborately in the World Archaeological Congress 10. And this place is inhabited by more than 30 sub-communities and the same number of languages and 300 dialects. It is obvious that there are sub-communities and their identities. But what makes them unifying? That's the Naga culture and tradition, which makes them unifying. Otherwise, 30 languages, 300 dialect, with so many of sub-communities, identities, there could have been a class. In a country like India, or the Indian subcontinent, archaeology and ethnic practices needs to penetrate to the popular space, come out of the academic boxes, and to everybody's knowledge from school level. And that is the thread of Indian and the role of archaeology, knowledge in promoting justice, equality, and sustainability in this contested time period which I refer to. No one owns archaeology but humans. Heritage is shaped by civilization of the time period, and civilization is a matrix, thus it's universal. So my call would remain to how do we popularize these knowledge keepers and the archaeology as a whole, rather than talking of Tamil Nadu archaeology or prehistory or proto-history only. Thank you.
Thank you, Alok. That's great. And actually, when you're talking about archaeology for social justice, I think there's a nice segue through to Alfredo, who's going to talk about an archaeology of tolerance. So, Alfredo, would you be willing to speak a little on your keynote?
Sure. Sorry again for not being able to be there, my image not to be there. So the World Archaeological Congress is based on ideas of inclusivity, diversity, and social justice. And I would like to bring some of these issues into my talk. So I think that one of the big challenges of our era, of our times, is how to live together. We are, today, our societies are mostly multicultural. There are very different communities living together. And at the same time, as our communities are growing more and more diverse, there is also backlash from reactionary populism, the extreme right, who would like to go back to an era where this diversity did not exist, when there was homogeneity, and when it was very clear who were the masters and who were the slaves. Of course, this is basically a fantasy with no correlate in the past, not the fact that there were dominators and dominated, but the fact that there were homogeneous societies in the past. So what I would like to do is to emphasize the multicultural character of past societies. And I would like to explore issues such as the concept of hospitality and generosity, and coexistence that have been so important in many societies in the past, especially in indigenous societies, in small-scale societies all over the world. My work for the last 10 years has focused on the Horn of Africa, and I'm especially interested in relations between different societies across the Indian Ocean, between the Horn of Africa, Arabia, South Asia, Southeast Asia. And I think there is a lot that we can learn from the past in this very wide region about this coexistence of people that have extremely different ways of life, extremely different cultures, even ontologies, faiths, and ideologies. But they were able to put in place a system that is very complex and that it was very persistent for over 2 millennia. So I think there are lots of lessons that we can learn from the past that can be applied to the present. And although the word tolerance is perhaps seen as not enough, it's not enough to tolerate others, but we have to learn how to appreciate others, how to appreciate other cultures. I think this could be at least the minimum basis on which to construct these societies that are not simply tolerant, but also generous and open to hospitality. So I will be talking about these concepts and using some of my experience working in the on the archaeology of the Indian Ocean to try to unpack these important questions.
Thank you. And I remember that we had a wonderful inter-congress in Osaka on coexistence, probably around, I don't know when, 2006, 2008, something like that.
Oh, sounds amazing.
5 or 6, yes.
Yeah, 5 or 6.
Yeah, that's right.
So I'd like Bayo to speak then, and then after Bayo, I'm going to ask Kasun to speak, then Inez, and then Peter to finish us off, I think. Probably, you know. So Bayo, can you talk a little bit about the challenges it is to do coming from Africa and the challenges of trying to be part of a global community? Because really that's where I think WAC makes a big difference to individuals, but also through the ripples to the communities around them. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because most of the we've had enormous problems getting visa approvals for Nigeria, and we are getting them through now. We've got 2 through this week on resubmission. But we had something like 90% knockback rate at the beginning, or maybe, yeah, it was really. But now we're working out how to do it so that people get through, and Kasun is helping with that.
Yeah, well, maybe I should start off mention a few things that probably Peter did not mention as to the history. Peter mentioned 1986. I think I was one of the postgraduate or graduate students that was at WAC-10 then, but the story was even before 1984 that Peter also mentioned in terms of the preparation. Right here in Nigeria in 1983 was the Pan-African Association for Prehistory and Related Studies Conference, where there was a motion to ban South Africans from attending meetings, and it was a kind of hectic conference then because we had the big names in African archaeology attending with different opinion on this. People who felt that academics should be separated from politics, that kind of thing. We have people like Desmond Clark, Austin Shaw, Peter Shinny, and that kind of thing. That was a bit up to WAC anyway. That was in 1983. And the other thing Peter did mention that I also think is very important is about IUPPS. whichever you look at it, that's the Union International International Union for Prehistory and Protohistoric Studies. That was initially going to be the sponsor of that Supernant conference. They had its headquarters in Paris, that was in France. So if you read the book of Peter Oko, you will see the shuttle between London and Paris. And incidentally, by 1984, I was in Paris as a postgraduate student. And I went to the field in Nigeria in 1986. And it was when I got to Nigeria that I got the catch of WAC again. From 1983, I've forgotten, nothing was going on in France as to a meeting coming up in the UK. So I was a late applicant to attend WAC-1. So that was the kind of background. And that was quite interesting to me, that a big meeting was going to happen in the UK and nobody was talking about it in France. That was quite interesting to me. So I was one person that came into work as someone you will call early, what do you call it? Someone who was just coming up in the career, that is early career person. And it was quite interesting to me. It was very easy for me to travel from Paris to the UK for WAC-1. At that time, as a Nigerian living in France, I needed no visa to be in the UK. I think I don't think people had problem being in the UK, obtaining visa then. But as we progressed, then we started having experience as to how easy it is for you to move around the world, depending on where you are coming from. And I think I did an article, Visa Stupidity, that was published in Archaeology. And you can just imagine the kind of things people go through to obtain visa. But with age catching up with me, I've also started having a kind of rethink as to how people can abuse visa granted to them, and that kind of saying the big issues now is what I see as the inequality in the world system, where for a very long time I had a difficult way of describing it. Started from talking about the developed and developed nation. We started talking about the southern and the northern nations, all kind of classification and that kind of thing. But the reality on ground is that no matter the way you look at it, that is discrimination in terms of access where you want to be. That's just the reality. There is discrimination, and you really have to cross some barriers to get.
Yeah, no, sorry, I just want to interrupt because we've still got 3 more people, and I want Kasun to speak on that because he's been addressing that discrimination. Kasun is actually going into people's visa applications, and I am too, and helping them write them so that they get approved. And it's a massive load of work, and people make the tiniest errors, like they don't submit the birth certificate and it's mandatory, or but Kasun, do you want to talk about that? Are you still there? Yeah.
Yeah, ma'am. I guess
And let the
the
young
visa
person talk about it too.
Yeah, I'm thinking this visa issue is a big challenge for the WAC-10, especially when me and Sir Professor Dr. Vinay Kumar sir, when we both joined to this program, this challenge, we got like around 90 to 100 calls from the outsiders, so especially from the South Asian region. And I think Professor Clarice also got the number of emails from the outsiders. So this issue, I think, this is the issue I like. This a challenge I need to categorize for three categories. One is that avoidable challenges, and solvable challenges is the second one, and the third one is real challenges. For the avoidable challenges mean that normally we are doing some mistakes while we are filling up some form, especially for the visa form. So I point out a few things from these applications. Like one is that overconfidence thing. While we are applying, we having the overconfidence with that because of our previous visits. So then the next thing is that some people were scared while applying it. Like they are thinking that our application will be rejected from this case. So that case is normally there, and someone like to apply and get it accepted as soon as possible. So prompt submission also being a big case for this submission issue. And the other thing is that overthinking and over reading about the guidelines. So that is also a case like someone, especially I met some people like they are saying that they already read up the things and these things are mentioned there, but you're saying that this is not that much needed kind of thing. But if we go in something over reading kind of, so then the issue is comes that we are thinking too much of that case. So that issue also there. In the next case, I try to raise that solvable issues. This is comes with the low exchange country people like me and the Indians and the Sri Lanka and Africa, this Africa as well as this South Asian region. This case is normally there, but it can be solved by using some solutions. I'll come to that solutions. And the third thing is that real issues. I point out three major issues why we support him for this visa thing. One is that country economic crisis. This is a very big issue to give getting accept this visas. And the second thing is that terrorism and war going in the country. So that is also a big issue. Why we bring the help to the people, and we saw that number of like rejecting because of this case. And the third thing is that include migrate issue. Like normally the area like this near to the Australian continent, that people like trying to migrate to the Australia and get the citizenship there. So that case, the Australian government very strict for the, especially I can take example as Sri Lanka. Number of roles recently also they formed because of this case. So these three things we can take, and from that I like to go for the solution which we made. One is that Professor Clary and my Professor Dr. Vinay Kumar sir always asking the people who are in this region, we asking them to send a number of proof documents. Like for example, if you got married, you can submit your marriage certificate, and if you having a baby, we can give you the birth certificate, and property details also we can give. Like normally we have to submit 10 documents for the application, but for these people who's having the real challenge to the getting this visa, so they can do these things. As well as if they travel to some other country, we found some person from the Nigeria, he had a really big issue like this in our country. I think Professor Karina knows that here the Nigeria having 80% rejection. So for that we asked him to submit this academic appearance for the Europe countries as well as the America or the higher exchange rate countries. So that will be very much helpful to them. And the second thing is that the organizers can give the strong visa. Let us, I think Professor Kellie was very much hectic with this thing. She given number of this kind of letters to the people, and I think most of them were accepted because of her joining with this thing. And the next thing I like to take that always if we did some mistake, so that we having an option in the Australian visa thing that they are giving a portal, they are giving a point that we can upload the wrong document and correct it from that option. So that also we can use. I used it. Professor Kellie knows how I got the thing that I can point it out. Like when I'm applying, I given my residence as Sri Lanka. So the case is that for the Sri Lankans or the countries like Sri Lanka, Pakistan, I guess, these countries having the biometric collection center. So for that, the people need to visit this biometric collection center and get approval from it. But the case is that when I'm in India not having this biometric collection center. So the case is that I have to change my residential address as the India, then only I got the approval from the embassy. So this is a big issue. These issues we are seeing number of things like so that I like to point out one thing, like when we are applying for some application for visa supporting thing, we first need to think first need to do as soon as we can. Yeah. Yeah, I'm concluding, ma'am. So that thing, so then we having the time to complete our things and get support from the people, and we can go 2 to 3 times for this thing, and then we can. So this is big issue. I think our knowledge, our ideas which we got from this thing, it will be very much supportive for the next session of WAC.
Thank you, Kasun. So you can see that Kasun is now an expert on applying for visas. He is absolutely expert because he is helping, he and Vinay Kumar are helping tens and tens of people, truly. And we've kind of got the hang of it now, but it was a black box at the beginning. I just like, we've only got 4 minutes to go, and I want to finish with Peter Stone. But Inez, could you just speak a little bit, please, about the elections and the democratic system for WAC? You're as secretary, vice president, sorry.
Hello. Yeah, so one of the things that we've been talking about many aspects of WAC. One of the things that shocked me when I went to WAC conference for the first time, and that was in Washington in 2003, was the democratic approach of WAC. And I was shocked because I was a PhD student at the time, so I was very young. And from the very beginning, I had a voice. I was invited to join the council because a representative from my region wasn't present there. And I was listened to all the time, as much as any of my other senior colleagues. And that was shocking because I came from a country, Spain, where hierarchy in the university is still a reality. And also I was used to conferences like UISPP, where only the senior scholars are the chairs of most of the sessions that are run. So that was shocking. And I think that's the important thing of WAC, that it is not about your position in the university. It's about representing a country, representing a culture, representing a specific group, and you have the chance. It doesn't matter how experienced you are and how senior you are in the discipline, you have the chance to be representing your region and your country. So we have the elections open at the moment for some of the regions. So we have a system in which we replace half of the countries every 4 years. There's been a bit of a difficult situation because during the COVID, we couldn't do the elections, but now we're back to normal. So we will be replacing half of the colleges. And so I encourage everyone not only to stand for positions, but also to encourage other colleagues to stand for positions in different countries. And I especially want to encourage people from Africa, because we have in the last 10 years, and probably more, we have had issues to find representatives from some of the regions in Africa. And WAC is only plural if we have representatives from all the regions. So we really need people from the different regions to be standing for the positions, to have their voices included in WAC.
Thank you. Very well said, Inez. So we've got no minutes left, but I just want in our no minutes, I'd like to say thank you to Caroline for inviting us all. And Pete Stone, can you just finish up with just a brief thing about the conflict session that you're organising, your plenary?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to hold up the picture of the there. You can see it's old-fashioned technology, but I will scan it and clip it and send it to you. The plenary session, WAC has been involved in conflict from 84 and following. Almost every WAC has had an element of conflict around it, and we have discussed conflict and armed conflict and the archaeological response to it in most WACs. What we're trying to do in the conflict session this time is to focus on a number of countries, predominantly but not exclusively in the Middle East, and see how colleagues are coping with conflict in those areas. But we hope there will be a lot of other colleagues attending the session, and we've got a full plenary session, so there's no other academic work going on at the time, and we've got 3 hours for this. So we hope those other colleagues from different countries who aren't represented will be able to tell their stories from countries that have recently been in conflict and have got out of conflict, and how how culture is being used as a healing process. Others who are in conflict, and finally the very difficult group, those who are anticipating that they may be in conflict in the near future. And we're trying to discuss all of that, and what we hope to do is get some very clear advice for organizations like the one I'm president of, the Blue Shield, who works to protect culture in armed conflict, about what people need on the ground. The key thing from my point of view is that conflict, or the preparation for conflict and the preparation to protect cultural heritage during a conflict, cannot wait until the conflict starts. It has to be done in peacetime. But nobody wants to spend the time or the energy or, crucially, the money to do that. And that's where real problems occur. So we have to get it in the global mindset that we have to prepare for armed conflict, even if armed conflict comes in the guise of a terrorist trying to blow up a museum in the UK, or blowing up a audience at a music festival, or whatever. Those are the issues that we need to actually begin to think about and address, so that we can mitigate the impact on culture and use culture, not as it is frequently at the moment, as a reason for conflict, a weapon in conflict and a target in conflict, but as a means of avoiding perhaps a conflict, or at least being used as a peace-building mechanism at the end of conflict and for reconciliation. So that goes there. If I may take 30 seconds, a couple of things. If anybody's listening still, go to the WAC website and read Peter Rucko's book, which is free download as a PDF, Academic Freedom and Apartheid, as a background for that.
Can you send us the link? Can you send the link? Could you send that link to the WAC list so anyone can read it, please?
Yeah, I mean, it's on the WAC website, but I'll try and find it. Koji made an important point that there is an impact on one's families. When I returned from 3.5 weeks away after WAC 4 in Cape Town, my wife, who was struggling with 4 kids under 7, had changed the computer password to WAC stinks. And just in terms of visas and the such, we worked from 1984 until 2008 with the same travel agent, and Hazel at Amity Travel marked the success of a congress if we could get Patrick Mbumwe Samba from the Cameroon to the Congress. And that was not only the problem of visas, but the problem of getting him out of the country and in through usually 3 or 4 other countries. And Patrick would normally have to start traveling in completely the wrong direction to actually end up where he was supposed to be going. So those are just some of the things. They've been the same for ages.
Yeah, well.
So please come to that conflict session and join in.
Thank you. And I think we talked together earlier before the meeting. It's about somebody who's going from one country to another country. They can't be named as, they can't fly out of their own country. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you for the people who've turned up to be part of the audience. I'm sorry we didn't open it up to questions to everyone, but I thought it was important that you got a sense of the panorama that is WAC. So everyone here is on this panel will be at WAC-10 on the 22nd of June next month. And thank you so much to Caroline for organising this for National Archaeology Week.